Please, please tell me there's something. Sunlight punched through the cathedral-high windows of the Crestmont Trust like a verdict, slicing the marble floor into rectangles of light and shadow. And in that hard, honest light, a little girl with dirt on her knees and an old card in her fist looked like a question the city had forgotten how to answer. Maya Cole pushed open the heavy doors and the bank's hum folded around her. The low electric buzz of traders' screens, the crisp shuffle of papers, the indifferent clink of polished shoes, and she felt every eye land on her like a physical weight. Her shirt was threadbare, her hair knotted at the nape, and the card her mother had insisted she keep was the size of a miracle and the color of memory. She slid it across a lacquered counter with the kind of courage that comes from hunger and the finality of having nowhere else to go. People turned away, leaned in, whispered. Some eyes narrowed in annoyance, others widened with a curiosity that smelled of spectacle. At the far end of the floor sat Gideon Hale, who had made his name on deals that read like maps to other people's lives, and his laugh, a well-practiced cascade, hitched when he noticed the small figure standing like an island amid the tide. A banker with kind hands, Clara Voss, took one look and led Maya toward Gideon's terminal because the old accounts and deep archives lived behind the screens he used. Nobody thought something sacred would hide in a faded piece of plastic. The card slid into the machine and the screen blinked, and for a moment Maya's whole life narrowed to the digits that crawled into being. Digits that did not belong to the street or the cardboard boxes she slept on. Digits that erupted like a sudden sunrise and made the floor drop out from under the room's gravity. Faces that had been scornful softened into astonishment. Gideon, who had been untouchable for years, found himself reading the number again, slower this time, as if repetition could make it less unreal. His smirk, which had punctuated so many boardroom victories, dissolved into something quieter, something that resembled humility. Clara crouched beside Maya and explained what the numbers meant, and the explanation spilled across the girl's face like rain. Disbelief, then a tide of tears, then a small, bewildered smile that felt like rescue. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Loom. Your support helps us spread more light in a world that desperately needs it. Maya's journey here had begun not with bravado but with a sequence of everyday erasures. A landlord's final shrug, a grocery clerk's polite avoidance, the slow learning of how to be invisible so you don't have to endure pity. Her mother had worked at a neighborhood shelter and, before she died, had pressed that thin card into Maya's hand with a whisper of instruction and the kind of faith that can seem foolish until it's needed. Unknown to Maya, a quiet man named Thomas Avery, who had spent the last chapter of his life small and wealthy and grateful for the warmth Maya's mother gave him in his sick rooms, had arranged a trust. He had liked to imagine that if Maya ever needed a miracle she would find it without fanfare, as if miracles preferred to arrive like a soft knock at the right hour. The trust had aged like wine, patient, compounding, silent. It had become a sum that could steady an entire life. When the balance glowed on Gideon's monitor, it was not merely surprising. It was a rebuke to the assumptions that had kept Maya invisible for so long. The room, for a heartbeat, belonged to her. The men in suits who had not looked twice now spoke in low, incredulous tones. The teller adjusted her name tag as if remembering she existed in a story she never saw herself in. Gideon rose and walked toward Maya, not with the performative sympathy of a man used to photographs but with a careful, genuine steadiness that felt like being found by someone who had been taught, privately, what to do with an unexpected grace. He offered water and a sandwich as if nourishment were the first formality of mercy, and he promised to place advisors on the account until the right hands, not the greedy, headline-hunting hands but the ones that understood guardianship, took over. The reveal shifted something in the bank's air. Whispers became a soft, collective intake. For Maya, the revelation was less about numbers and more about texture. The roughness of fear easing, the sudden warm trust that maybe she could breathe without sharpening herself for survival. She listened to Clara name trustees and legal steps and community resources, but her mind wandered back through memory. Her mother's cooking that smelled like lemon and laundry, the way she had taught Maya to hide freckles from the cold with a laugh, the small brutal kindness of the city that had mostly looked away. There was grief folded into the joy because money cannot replace faces you lost, but it could buy time, and time could buy choices, and choices could begin to stitch together a life that was not only about survival. Gideon watched her with an expression that kept changing. Businessman, observer, then quietly human. A man who had built walls to keep uncertainty at bay, and who now found those walls breached by a child he had laughed at minutes before. He realized that being wealthy did not exempt him from being moved. Wealth had not hardened him into stone, but perhaps had placed him in a rarer position to do something that mattered outside. A winter wind licked at the building's steps and the city moved on, unaware of how the shape of one life had changed inside a room of glass and light. Maya stepped back onto the sidewalk later that day with a small paper bag in her hand. Her face no longer wind-bitten into caution, but loosened into a fragile, hopeful smile. Crowds passed. The skyline kept its indifferent grandeur, but under the weight of that ordinary afternoon she carried something private and enormous. The knowledge that someone had believed in her from beyond her knowing, that a stranger's gratitude had converted into a gift of safety. She thought of Thomas Avery's quiet generosity, of Clara's soft competence, of Gideon's unexpected tenderness, and felt the threads of a community weaving, abruptly, around her. Before the light faded from the day, she let herself imagine a future where she could help others like she had been helped, where food and rent and a clinic visit would not be crises but details in a life she could build. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and comment, and tell us where you're watching from so we can appreciate you. As she walked away, the card folded back into her pocket. Small, obsolete, ordinary, and Maya kept it there like a promise. The city continued to have its sharp edges and its indifferent corners, but the bank's moment had become a quiet proof that kindness travels in many currencies. Legacy, action, a hand extended at the precise moment when someone believes you deserve better. Her smile stayed with her like sunlight, tentative but real, and in that smile lay a new kind of courage, the courage to receive. Because kindness always wins.